can you find people that are around you, even if it's only one or two, that understand you and that you can get feedback from? And can you figure out exactly what it is that makes you happy? And then when you make that list of the things that you would be willing to do to be happy, there certainly are the things that adults have to do where you have to monetize whatever your skills are, right? That unfortunately is true. But there are so many different ways to do it. So keep your mind open. And if we're in the music world, right? So you can do as much music as you want. Until I went back to college, all I did was sing. And sometimes I sang for the joy of it, and sometimes I just sang for money. So and it wasn't always enjoyable. So if it's your skill set, if that's the thing, so if you go through it and you realize that the two things I do best are playing guitar and performing guitar, and nothing else comes close, then the answer is that you should be playing guitar for a living. Even if that doesn't feel great artistically, that might be the best way for you to succeed because your actual skill set can be utilized.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Listen to the Vibes, and from a band called, was it Days Before Tomorrow? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what, I may not get the name right, but I do love the music, and the guys from the band is Eric Klein and Scott Kahn. You play the genre that I probably love the most, that Styx, I guess Kansas kind of sound, and I don't know what to say, but the album kicks butt. So I highly recommend it, and I want to know more about you guys. So Eric, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I was a combination band kid, theater kid growing up. And from theater, I learned that I could sing in a band if I also wanted to. And that was the end. So, since then, I've been in one way, shape, or form singing in rock bands, but I've always had a kind of a love for the theatrics and for telling stories and for melodic and harmonic content as a way to portray emotion. So kind of that's where my whole approach to singing started, and it started young, and it's just been developing as is. And if you're asking other questions, like, I'm got a teenager, I'm married. Yeah, I have a nice house. Life is good.
Teenager. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a grandson that's becoming a teenager, so
Hold your breath.
I was glad to get those days over with.
I love it. I have to be honest with you. I love it. I love this whole age. It's fun having a relationship with another person who is also a songwriter and has a mind for art. So we get to challenge and push each other about what's good and what's bad and how to approach melody and how to think about rhythms. It's like something that we could actually sit and talk about in the living room. So
Yeah.
I feel like I got really lucky in that regard.
Oh yeah, if you got
I also
something
have Scott to talk about and debate that with. Is usually just as fun.
If you have something like that in common, that there's a bond there that some parents don't get to share, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we enjoy it. I appreciate that.
And you will find out the older that you get, or the older that they get, the smarter you get. So well, Scott, don't want to leave you out, man. Tell me about you.
Yeah, well, I mostly grew up in New Jersey, and but I've lived all around the country, and but I was not a band kid, so I got started in the rock and roll space, really the summer going into high school when I, really started playing instruments, and I just took to a whole bunch of them. And when I started out, it was new wave music. It was Gary Newman that got me inspired to be a musician. I wanted to be a keyboard player first.
Hmm.
But I was one of those weird kids, because like when we were growing up, you kids really listened to music, and they didn't overlap each other in genres. There were the metalheads. Some kids were into new wave. Other kids were into classic rock and roll rock, like the Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen stuff. And those worlds really never mixed. Like in New Jersey, growing up, you were either in the Bruce Springsteen camp or the Bon Jovi camp. They did not mix. It's like it was no. And for the record, I was in the Bon Jovi camp by far. But so
I like you anyway.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that
and
was
I
it.
ended up,
But
and I ended up, and he and I write songs together, and I ended up in the Bruce camp. So how do you know? Who
yeah,
knows what to expect, right?
yeah. But that's where I started. But what got me into progressive rock was really, in the early 80s. Yes, 90125 came out,
Mhm.
and right around the same year, Asia's first record came out. And I just could not get enough of those. And that just had me really hooked. And then once I discovered Marillion, it was just all bets were off. I was just so taken by it. And by then I was also playing guitar, and moved in that realm. And today, I mean, and if you talk to Eric and I, and both of us, like, our music tastes are all across the map. I mean, it's just,
Oh yeah,
we we appreciate the good music in whatever genre it is.
Mhm.
But progressive rock is just sort of, when we start writing stuff, it just, that's where it falls. That,
yeah.
no matter how much we love all sorts of other stuff, this is just where we end up, being with our musical output.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, but there's a chance that I might get Steve Howe on the show.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, so that would be the ultimate, because I mean, yes, and Asia, the bands you just mentioned, like
Yeah.
what was that band? I think they had one album out. It was GTR or something like
GTR.
that. Yeah.
Yes. When the heart rules the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Max Baker, great singer.
But,
That my Marillion story to go with Scott's is that I was listening, same thing. I was a voracious reader and a voracious listener. I listened to whatever I can get my hands on. If people wanted to make me mixtapes of early hardcore, I
mhm.
was listening to it. If people were listening to the Smiths and New Order and Echo and the Bunnymen, Joy Division earlier, I would have been all over that. And then I had my friends who were they were guitar aficionados, so they were listening to Dio, and they were listening to Purple, and they were listening to Rainbow, and there was Yes and Rush, and it was kind of like this other world. So I was brought to see Rush. The first time I saw Rush with Rory Gallagher at Madison Square Garden. And the next time I got to see Rush, Marillion opened and played the entire Misplaced Childhood album front to back as the opening band. And that's when I knew that if I'm writing music,
Mhm.
I think
Oh.
is going to end up where my heart lays when it comes to expression.
Well, here's a fun tidbit that I've never told anyone in an interview, or even my bandmates. But I remember the first two songs I learned to play as cover songs were "Round and Round" from Rat and "Run to the Hills" from Iron Maiden.
Iron
And I was
Maiden.
a drummer, and I was a drummer on both.
Lord have
Man,
mercy.
you're playing
Yeah,
Iron Maiden, you must be pretty badass then.
yeah, yeah. That was too long ago, a long, long time ago.
Well, when I was in school, we most of the guys that listened to classic rock were also into heavy metal and all. But secretly, when nobody else was around, I'd sneak in maybe a little Duran Duran or something.
Oh, well, now you
Yeah.
just hit one of my top 5 bands of all time. So I support that entirely.
Wow, and they're supposed to
I
be
said, if
coming to Austin.
Yeah, the new tour is pretty nice. I've seen them a few times recently, and have the pleasure of knowing their saxophonist.
Ah,
So yeah.
all right. I'm sorry, Eric. Did I cut you off?
No, I was just gonna say if you would go to any one of our Spotify or Apple Music accounts right now to see what new releases they suggest for us, that that would alone show you why we ended up in progressive rock, because I think you can't synthesize all of that, the music that hits you emotionally, um, with an open mind, and then without having a music genre that allows for multiple influences by nature. You know, progressive rock is not going to shun you for bringing in different feels, different styles, different time signatures, different types of key signatures, even too. You know, you will be writing in flat keys where a lot of guitar players don't normally play in flat keys. We're doing a lot of stuff that is just coming from whatever we're listening to. So my listening for this week would have been David Lang released a new classical piece that's mostly cello based, but also the new Depeche Mode came out.
Oh
So,
wow.
right, and then the new Yes came out, right? So they're announced the new Yes single. So all of that is in my instant new release play.
Oh
So
no
it's kind of
way.
Yeah. And and something,
Cello,
Eric,
Cello, by the way, if you want to hear any of that.
yeah, and something, that Eric mentioned is really interesting and relates to me as well. That is the my co-guitar player in this band, Derek Devotowicz. He's the most he's really and he's a Berkeley trained guitar player. So
Oh
he's like
man.
really hardcore. He comes from the world of Steve Lukather and Dan Huff
Yeah.
and Larry Carlton and all those guys. And but because I'm equally at home on keyboards, I've when I write stuff and when I work with Eric, we come up with stuff from keyboards, and so we're writing stuff where you show it to Derek. It's like, why are you picking these chords and these keys? Because it's like if we had just started as guitarists, we'd be writing in a lot of different places. Then the fact that I'm a guitar player who also embraces keyboards, so I think part of what makes our stuff sound a little different than other people is that you know everything's not in the same keys and the same tunings as every other guitar player.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I like
Or at
about
least
prog, what I like about prog is that sometimes you have that more quieter moments, and then sometimes you want to jam. I mean, look, Rush, a perfect example of, sometimes they could mellow out, and then the other times they're taking off. Triumph, another band that does that. I mean, hell,
you're
Kansas,
yep.
Styx.
Yeah, you know part of part of why Derek and I work really well together in this band as two guitar players is that because again everyone in this band is a multi-instrumentalist. Pretty much
Mhm.
everyone knows their way around multiple instruments, even though they have their primary role in the band. But I think the fact that Derek and I we're both happy to sit back and not play and still enjoy just being part of the song, um, makes for those dynamics, like what you just said. It can be light, it can be airy, then it can be heavy and full. Um,
Mhm.
and I think it takes, a certain discipline. Like, there are a lot of metal guys that like they need to be playing full on all the time. And we don't, you know, we like to mix it up.
Yeah, that's what I enjoyed about what I listened to from you guys is that that mixture. I was listening to it earlier, and I walked in. My wife says, "Are you listening to Rush?" I'm like, "No,
Hmm.
it's not Rush, but it kind of got that sound to it, doesn't it?" And then I flip to the next song, and it's, dang, that sounds almost like it could be a brand new Stick song or something.
Cool.
Nice.
And you guys clash heads sometimes, or how does that collaboration go?
I think that, yeah, both of us will say the same thing. We know each other so well that it's not that things just don't get heated. We get intense
Mhm.
and we kind of dig our heels in, but it's not personal because we know each other too well.
Mhm.
So we have I hate to use like I am a licensed therapist, so like I'm using therapy talk on you. Like I don't like we do have space to carry each other's emotions. And sometimes it'll mean that somebody really wants to investigate a direction for a song and will be ultimately disappointed when no one else likes it. So we're able to go down those roads and push each other pretty hard about things that are good or not, or what we feel is not good or not appropriate or not fitting, not flowing. As an example, I figure that I come with the vast majority of what I want to sing already mapped out before I bring it to the band. I've got lyrics written. And then my expectation is that as soon as we start to record, that
Scott's gonna
specifically
change it.
he's going to sit and in my ears be saying, that was cool, try this. That was cool, try this. And I'm married to what I'm singing. Like, I really want to sing what I'm singing. I wrote the song the way I want to sing it. But because we have that trust in a relationship of trying new things, I'll check my ego, even if my temper's up. So if like I'm starting to feel a little heat, like, I'm breaking a sweat because I don't want to change, I trust the relationship musically well enough to know that if I'm getting a suggestion, it's coming from a good place. It's not a critique, and I'm going to try everything. So we'll rearrange backing vocals for 2 or 3 days. We'll just whatever it takes to push. And it doesn't mean we don't kind of like snip at each other, but it's not we've been doing it for too long for it to become, no one takes it out of the room. And once it's over, there's jokes made and then we move on.
Yeah. Would you say almost brotherly, or because
Yeah,
I know when I clashed with my brother, it was like World War III. So
no, it's good. In fact, if you were to be in the room when Derek and I are tracking guitars, like, and we'll give each other direction on where to go with guitar solos, with lead guitar parts. It's like, I'll suggest parts. Derek, it'd be really cool if you did this kind of really quick riff here, but then hold right there, at the end of the bar, and throw in one of these cool, things that you do that I know is just sort of a typical Derek thing. And likewise, I'll be working on a part and he'll suggest things to me because we all, like Eric said, we know each other so well. And like, we've got very definite different styles. Like, once you get to know us and know the music, you can really identify, oh, that's a Scott Conn guitar part, and oh, that's a Derek Dovadowicz part. And a lot of times, you can really tell. And so we know what each of us are capable of. And so while a song's being developed, Eric can hear like, okay, Derek came up with, this really cool riff. And then I'm sure Eric's thinking, oh, I know what Scott's going to do there. And likewise, any one of us might give suggestions to the other. Hey, could you do a little of X, Y, and Z for us? I mean, it's with age comes, sort of maturity and like an acceptance. Like, we know, it's not personal when, if one of us tells each other that we really don't like something and we use much stronger words than that, we also know that it's not personal and we can laugh about it and be like, huh, okay. In fact, on our first big record, our breakthrough record, The Sky Is Falling, we recorded with the legendary rock producer Ron Nevison. And there were a couple of songs where Derek and I were working on like the solo section for one of the songs. And so basically Ron was remote at the time. And so basically we would record stuff in my studio, and then we would load the file. We would FTP the file back then. This was before the days of Dropbox on the cloud. And so Ron would download the file, and he would literally say, that solo sucks. And like, no other feedback, just basically go back, retrack it. So
do it again.
We'd work on it for like the next half hour, send him something back, and be like, no, that blows. No. So he didn't necessarily know what he wanted. He just knew that he would know what he likes when he hears it. And leave it up to us to just give him 20,000 different things.
Right, which goes to Scott's point, which is we have to be able to trust each other to give constructive feedback because we weren't getting it someplace else.
Yeah.
Like, we had to cut it down. And not to belabor it. So for me, like, I only write on a keyboard. So when I'm playing, so I'm always thinking of really dense chording and structures. So we'll put songs together, and while the rhythm section is working out where they want to drive something, I'll sit say in the keyboard player John's ear or in Derek's ear and be like, okay, so what Scott's playing is this. But what I want you to do is I want you to add the sixth and the 13. And what I want you to do here is I want you to take that out and I want to like put the third back in. Derek doesn't want the third in, but or Scott doesn't want the third in, but put it back in. The next thing you know, we end up with these really complicated chords. So sometimes when it's really complicated, if you're listening to it, you'll be like, oh, that's Eric's fault. And like a lot, we just all have our thing. And the goal is at the end when we're done demoing and we're ready to really record, that we've workshopped it and what sticks is the right part.
Yeah.
So if a part came through a month worth of workshopping a song and it's still there, that's probably the answer. And at that point, everybody could just let it go. And we're like, okay, we're going to record it. That's what it's going to be. You know, because otherwise we're all going to listen over and over and over. We'll fix and change and fix and change. And then you get that kind of, you get your whatever the term would be, like you're afraid to show it to the world, right?
Yeah.
So you're writing great songs, but you're not producing anything to share because you're constantly in that fear of, well, what if this isn't good enough? Or the opposite, some people fear, what if this is good?
Mm.
Then what? What do I do if somebody actually likes this?
Well, what's great is that you leave your ego at the door. That's the downfall of so many bands, is you got one person that thinks, oh, I'm much better than this. I could go do this on my own. I don't need you guys. But y'all aren't doing that, and you're making it work.
I think Scott was probably going to say this too, but when we got the band back together, we took a very old school approach to Reformation. So a lot of bands, even before COVID, but during COVID, got very comfortable in a virtual space.
Mm-hmm.
Where composition was done in a virtual space. And it's brilliant because you've got the technology and the ability. You can write consistently with people all over the world. So we decided, just for the fun of it, to try to buck the trend and see what would happen if we got together where everyone had song ideas, but instead of only having those ideas passed back and forth via the internet, that we would get into the studio and hack them out together as much as we could to gain chemistry and develop trust.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that these 5 that you've heard for this EP are done, and then the next group of songs I'm hoping shows the same approach, and that you listen to that like a couple months from now, you get some new music from us and you're like, yeah, you guys are still doing it. Like that's our goal. To have it still feel like we're collaborating and we're really all bringing our influences to the table.
Yeah. There, that whole COVID thing, I think people got so comfortable with being separated. I mean, for me, I have to be around people. If I go to the grocery store, I know the thing, especially at Walmart, they got those self checkout lines. I'd rather spend the extra 10 minutes in line with the cashier just to have somebody different to talk to and try to make them smile or laugh. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of our problems now. Why people seem so distant from each other is we got a little too used to it. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do, because our keyboard player lives a good hour and 20 minutes from rehearsal. I live a good hour and 20 minutes from rehearsal. So there's a commitment to that process. And it is hard because sometimes you've had a full day on a Thursday or a Friday or a Tuesday, whatever day is we're going to be getting together. And for me doing therapy, so I might have talked to some people who are really having it way, way, way worse than I have it. And then my kid comes home or my wife comes home and the dog's on my lap. And then you do fall into that pattern of, well, I have what I need in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And for great musicians, virtual recording has been an explosion. There are great albums coming out from bands that would have never been bands because of being able to cross the digital divide. but we're
Yeah.
just trying to do it a little differently as a response. We've all been isolated, and now we're just trying to get together and feel what it's like to have the experience of being in a band again. And so that way, if we get lucky and we end up playing a whole bunch of live shows, we're not strangers. We don't
Yeah.
need to go and book a rehearsal room for 3 months to finally learn what it feels like for the songs to sound like band songs rather than recording projects.
Yeah.
Hopefully, where the songs are being developed as a band element, so they just translate right to live.
And I think
Yeah.
that gives our music just sort of the classic underlying feel that it does. Because when you're just shipping files back and forth, there's a little less flexibility when it comes to arranging the songs.
Mm.
Because an idea starts out and someone sends the core of the song around to the other guys, and then they add their parts. And as soon as you start doing that, it becomes very hard to change parts and to move things around and to say, well, you know what? It'd be cool if halfway through the verse you switch to a different chord here because, well, now the bass player has to redo his parts and keyboard player has to redo his, and the guitar, like everyone has to change things. And so I think you get a lot of stuff that is really, many of the parts are just sort of the first pass at it because it's still a challenge to go back and change it. But like Eric said, we're in the room working the songs together. So by the time we commit ourselves to the real recording, we've already got the core parts, we know are sticking. We know how the chord, all the cool chords and the weird notes and the thirds and fifths and 13ths and whatever Eric has thrown in there. Like, we know what is sticking and we know what's the right stuff. And so what's going to surprise band members as the tracks emerge and develop is like, oh, check out this cool extra stuff that Scott and Derek threw in. Check out these really neat sounds that John found, came up with while working on his keyboards. And then of course, once we get to the vocals, it's like, oh, well, now listen to all these other harmonies and ideas that came out of, Scott, Eric, and Derek, sitting in the room, for hours just dissecting, the vocal parts. And so really, being in the room does generate a different kind of output.
Whenever I edit my videos, and I know this is a lot different from what y'all are talking about, but say I've done this long edit and my wife will say, oh, you should have done this instead. And I'll go back and I'll have to go through all this work to fix it, or the person that I was doing the video for doesn't like it and wants to try something different. After a while, you just like, you know what? I'm tired of doing this. This is good enough.
Yeah.
And I just only imagine with, the multiple instruments and vocals and all that, y'all are changing. I'm just doing all this with the same friggin' video, just different clips out of it. I couldn't imagine doing it the way y'all do it, and have
Well,
to do it that way.
it's very much the same.
Yeah.
I
It's
give.
right.
So you're a therapist. Funny thing is, the last interview I did, the guy is a keyboard player and he's a therapist as well.
So that just means that we're using music as self-care, and or we're probably deluded.
The mentally deranged,
Right.
helping the
It's one
mentally
or the
deranged.
other. I'm not really sure yet. And being that I'm also a humanist, I believe in my own pathway being the one that is. So I'm just gonna accept it and hope that you accept what, my lived experience is for what it is. It's my truth, man. So if it's delusion, cool. If it's self-care, then even better. But I think it's a combination of all of it. It does. I find that two fields that correlate way more often are math or IT.
Mm-hmm.
People who are doing technical things that require exceptional detail, because people who are really good at that see the beauty and the creativity inside of code, inside of mathematics, inside of numbers. The things that seem vanilla or boring or generic to somebody else, somebody who's really a musician at the same time, sees the joy in that and the fun of it. So that person who's coding becomes a video game coder. The person who's doing math is enjoying, if they're teaching math to eighth graders, they're enjoying the fun of playing with the numbers, playing with the process, presenting it in a way that is digestible and fun, because those two worlds actually mix really well. And then the other is my side, which is, the touchy-feely side. You get people who are always expressing themselves with words and music. So you have a high empathy quotient, and you feel like, if I get this joy of being able to express myself in music, then maybe I can help somebody else. Right? You don't know if you're going to be good at it, but you want to. It's just part of it. It's part of what you want to do.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, one of the reasons why I started this channel was I was hoping to bring some inspiration to others, maybe bring a little positivity into their life. Now, I won't get into detail about myself, but I've had a lot of health issues, both physically and mentally, and I've tried to use my experiences, the things that I've done to help me, hopefully help others. I bring life coaches on, I bring actors, musicians, and all kinds of different folks, so that they might be able to get through to someone out there, to whether it's to help them get through another day or to help them to go after their dreams, and so many of us that have that desire to help others, usually we've gone through something in our lives. Is that the same case with you?
Oh yeah. I mean, it would be a separate podcast if I gave you some of the the experiences that I've been through. Family catastrophes, near-death experiences, cars lighting on fire.
Your time in a Turkish prison?
Yeah, that one I'm leaving out. And I do, you'll read in the lyrics, it's pretty obvious, but I'm also sober. So there's also that part of my journey. But yeah, I think there is a certain amount of humility in living through experiences that other people may not have lived through, that make you feel like you should be giving back, because otherwise you've been given this opportunity and this time that other people may not have been lucky enough to get through. So if you have that time, then being productive with that time for other people, not just for yourself, is super important.
I'm definitely with you on being sober. After years of being an alcoholic, I mean, I started drinking when I was 12, and I didn't stop. I mean, really stop till, gosh, what has it been, about 10 years ago? And
I'm at 11 years.
Good for you.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's fun. And what's funny now is that it used to be so rock and roll to talk about whether or not you're gonna like live, crash, and burn. And now so many musicians and actors and artists and whatever are just common, like it's a common experience to say, oh, and then my life became unmanageable and now I'm sober. And people say it out loud, whereas before it was either you said it for shock value because it was something you were supposed to do, you were supposed to live hard, or because you thought it would make somebody uncomfortable, like that, people who are uncomfortable with their mental health saying that they had a mental illness just to push you into discomfort. Whereas now I feel like we're just much more comfortable about talking about mental health. If you go to TikTok with your teenager, they know more about mental health, about diagnoses, about interventions, about where to find help, with whom to speak than we ever had. So again, it's kind of like living out loud. So I appreciate that you're saying it out loud, because it's one of those things I never hide it, because it's no big deal to me. It's a big deal to me personally, but that part of it's someone else's business. But it's no big deal to be labeled as sober to other people. I'm like, well, that's just a fact. I'm also a vegetarian. Like, whatever.
This interview's over now.
And I know I was going to say I'm barking up the wrong tree, but you understand what I mean? It's not as important to me whether or not other people are what I am.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to join a club. I'm just throwing it out there just in case somebody hears that and says, oh, you know, I'm friends with Scott, and Scott's singer happens to be sober, and my cousin is going to die, and I don't know who to talk to. So I'm going to call Scott and see if Scott will get me in touch with Eric, and see if Eric will talk to my friend's cousin. Right? You don't know who you're going to influence. So you live it out loud and you hope that you're making a difference. So some of it comes out in the lyrics. And Scott and I do sometimes collaborate on lyrics, and it's the same thing. We come from a place of, we look at the world, like the awe in the world, and make big statements and then try to write around them. And then you let the person that's reading it interpret it. I've had multiple people ask me if we have and again, we're not going to go down this road, but I get asked often if we have a religious bend to some of our music, because there's this thing where, especially on The Sky Is Falling, which was a concept album, in the end there's this thing. I know you're going to get shocked here. Ready? At the end of it, there's hope.
Wow.
There's optimism. So they read optimism as religiosity.
Uh-huh.
You see what I mean? Like, so to me, that means like, well, if I brought somebody a feeling of spirituality out of a message of a positive outcome, I think we're doing our job, right? Like, however they interpreted it, if it gave them some comfort or some happiness, cool.
Yeah. And
Well,
I'll
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
no, go ahead. I'm good.
Real brief, because I don't want to make this about me, but you know, I had partied for
podcast.
I partied for so many years, and then I ended up getting saved and started going to church, and I even preached. I preached for 5 years, and then I ended up getting away from God and started drinking and doing the drugs again. By the time I was 36, I had a heart attack, and I lost my family, and it was quite the road to get my family back. And even though I have a relationship with my kids, I can still see that strain, that, you know, because of what I put them through. And I interviewed JJ French, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and JJ was telling me how they were a sober band, but they couldn't tell the audience that they were sober because they were afraid it was going to ruin their reputation because they didn't drink and do drugs.
Well, look, how about the classic example, you know, David Lee Roth, Van Halen, the bottle of Jack Daniels on stage was usually a bottle of iced tea, you know, masquerading as Jack Daniels. I mean, and look, I mean, he grew up, you know, and he grew up the son of a doctor. I mean, you know, he knew a little bit about caring for himself. I mean, hell, after Van Halen, he even became an EMT in New York City.
I know.
I mean, you know, and you know, going back to part of the conversation just before with Eric, it was like when all of us, when we were growing up, it was like, you know, I had to convince people, it's like, you know, just because I'm not abusing drugs doesn't mean I can't rock just as hard as you.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, you know, when I was younger, it's like, what do you mean you listen to Pink Floyd and you don't get stoned? Well, it's like, yeah, I just freaking love the music. You know, I mean, it's like, I don't need to get stoned to be enjoying this, and I don't need to be, you know, just trashing everything around me in order to, you know, to play high gain, you know, metal stuff. You know, I didn't need that. And you know, today, like, you know, if we should be fortunate enough to be on a tour, you know, it would be laughably embarrassing. It's like, look at the food they have. You know, these guys have the healthiest diet on tour. It's like, wow, you know, there's, you know, these guys are actually caring about life and what they're putting into their bodies and stuff. So yeah, I mean, the times, everything has just evolved just so much from where we all grew up.
Yeah. And I think bringing it to the band conversation, because we are talking about the band, like if you want to Kyle, if you wanted to do a deep dive into the messaging when it comes around mental health, so those song "Killing Myself" on the EP,
Yeah,
that was all real, like every word written, and the little monologue that goes on in the lead section, like that was my lived experience.
Really?
And it does come back. People will listen to it and then ask me. And that's where I think it becomes important, because you're trying to, and if you're trying to inspire people, and then without getting too serious, take it the opposite way. The other part is that I also have friends who say that I get up in the morning on my Peloton and I put on Has Time Moved On? I put on Last Song from the Sky is Falling. I put on Lighters when I want to pace it down a little bit. And then, and You're Not the One, which is like track 13. I love that song. And I'm going to put that on. And those are like 4 of my workout songs. So it's also just inspiring people to be in a good mood and maybe get their heart rate up and do something that gets their day started, or gets them out of their work day where they go and they go for a run, and we're part of that. So it doesn't only have to be the intense level of uh helping people through a feeling of, should I even live?
Yeah.
Is life living? There is messaging around that where we definitely touch on it. And I think out of context, the song Killing Myself would not be an optimistic one to listen to without the rest of them. But there's also the other side of it, which is just that we're a rock band, and hopefully people listen to it just because they love the harmonies and the melodies, and they're like, this is a lot of fun. This
Yeah.
feels like something that I used to listen to, but it's a new version of it. It's something a little bit more modern, and I can get behind it just for that alone. And some people don't. I mean, right? I'm sure you've got a million friends who you listen to music with that they don't care about the lyrics. They
Some
just
folks
don't.
don't.
Does the hook do something to me? Do I like the beat?
I like the
For a
riff.
guitar player, would be like, is the riff killing? Do I like the guitar tone? Is the drummer blowing my mind with polyrhythms? Oh, there's a singer. It doesn't matter, because music is we're all hoping that people should be as omnivorous with their music as possible. Whatever makes you happy,
I
go
just
and
want to
listen
be
to
able
it.
to play air guitar to it. So
Right. I love that. I do too. I wish I could play more guitar.
The air guitar parts to our songs are a little more technical, so you really have to work at it a little.
oh, I've gotten really good at it over the years. So nobody plays air guitar like me. I'm the best. No,
I stick to air drum.
I can still do Phil Collins. Do 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 do. No, Scott, has there been anything in your life that you've had to overcome, whether it's musically or just personally?
Oh, yeah. Well, when I was younger, people broke into my house and tried to stop them, and I got knifed. Um, and then as a result of that, I had to miss the Adam and Friends Were Faux concert that was coming through. That was back in the when he was touring behind Goody Two Shoes.
Goody do,
And
goody
my
do.
my friend and his uncle went to the show, and they brought me back a tour shirt, which was cool because I was on crutches at that point.
Oh man.
But yeah, I dealt with that. You know, I've had all sorts of crazy shit happen to me. When I was younger, I was on the volunteer ambulance rescue squad for my town. Um, when I was young, I was a cadet on the squad, and we had a patient in the back of the ambulance who freaked out, pulled a knife, threatened to kill anyone who moved for the door, and I was trapped in the back of an ambulance with him during a showdown in a hospital emergency room parking lot.
Oh
Um,
no.
Crazy stuff happening in the middle of what is otherwise really nice, upper middle class suburbia. um, you know, you never know when and where just the craziest stuff happens. So definitely learning to, you know, I got to learn at an early age that you just don't know what's going to happen, and just you just have to know how to roll with it and accept what's happened and process it and move on from it. Um, yeah.
Well, so I guess it's not a good idea for me to show you my knife collection.
Oh my God, my son is obsessed with knives, so it wouldn't phase me, you know. But
Well, there's just so many folks out there that are a little reluctant to chase after their dreams, and I don't know. You never know what's holding them back. Scott,
well,
what kind of advice would you give them?
well, well, the advice that I definitely give to younger musicians is if you're trying to make a career out of music, Well, you have to sort of know what is it you want to, what is it you love about music that makes you want to do it. You know, there are guys that play in cover bands or in wedding bands, and they make a career out of getting paid to play other people's music. For me, I never cared at all about covers. My first band in high school was the only time I was ever in a cover band. For me, creating music is how I express myself emotionally through musical art. And I aspire to be commercially successful with what I produce musically. But if that never ever happened for me, and it hasn't, I'm not a big famous rock star yet. If it never happens for me, nothing is going to stop me from continuing to create my art because this is how I express myself. And so for someone at the younger end of it, 18 years old, trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life? Well, if you're pursuing the music for art's sake, make sure you have some other plan for supporting yourself. I've had another career, that allowed me to pay the bills, allowed me to buy all of the great music toys that I want. I didn't have to go the starving artist route. Um, but but right now, it's much harder to make a financially successful living, in the journey of music. When you're creating original music, there are tens of thousands of people putting out new records, every month because it's so easy to record for yourself. So getting heard above that noise and getting to the level where you're playing 10,000 seats a night, you know that does not happen for most people. That happens for less than 1% of them. So just have a plan. Like, now if it happens to be that you just love playing all music and other people's music, well, then there are more definitive paths that you can actually get paid for playing music. um and you can make a great living, doing that. It's really about, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do with my music? What do I have time in my life for? Like, do I have time to be in a wedding band and also write original music? Or if I just care about my art, okay, well then what other job can I do so that I can afford to make my art? And then if you're lucky, you get to quit the day job because the art becomes, a big success. But, just don't have all of your eggs in that one basket, because these days, it's never been so hard to monetize making music because you don't make money selling records anymore. Um,
Sure.
you know, when we were growing up, the funny thing was concerts drove album sales. Record labels spent money to put bands on tour because there was a direct correlation that if a band came to a town and played a concert, the next week there would be a massive elevation in sales of records because the one big fan of the band brought their two or three other friends to the concert, and those friends were blown away, and then they went out and bought the records, and records were where people made money. But today the model is completely flipped. Everyone expects their music for free or for $10 a month streaming everything. So now the record you put out is really the marketing tool that gets people to want to come see your concert, where you can make some money from ticket sales and merchandise. But you don't make a lot of money from the selling of records, which is what you used to do. So it's just a whole different beast. And so you just have to be aware of that and realize you can't just assume you're going to be the next big rock star and make millions of dollars from your music. So just be, approach it with that open mindset that, yes, I'm going to pursue my art, but I also need to put food on the table and buy my toys.
Amen to that. All right, Eric, your turn.
So what advice would I give to somebody who wanted to be in a band? Is that
But
the general?
just it doesn't necessarily have to even be in a band, just to pursue their dreams in general.
So yeah, I feel like the the goal to me is, can you find people that are around you, even if it's only one or two, that understand you and that you can get feedback from. And can you figure out exactly what it is that makes you happy? And then when you make that list of the things that you would be willing to do to be happy, there certainly are the things that adults have to do where you have to monetize whatever your skills are, right? That unfortunately is true. But there are so many different ways to do it. So keep your mind open. And if we're in the music world, right? So you can do as much music as you want. Until I went back to college, all I did was sing. And sometimes I sang for the joy of it, and sometimes I just sang for money. So, and it wasn't always enjoyable. So if it's your skill set, if that's the thing, so if you go through it and you realize that the two things I do best are playing guitar and performing guitar, and nothing else comes close, then the answer is that you should be playing guitar for a living. Even if that doesn't feel great artistically, that might be the best way for you to succeed because your actual skill set can be utilized. If you have other things that can make you happy, go for them. The other thing I would say is to, and we're all awful at this, but to learn to give yourself a break when you don't meet creative goals at the pace at which you expect. So how do you deal with frustration, and how to take the word failure out of that discussion? So many times we're constantly describing things as pass fail, or success or fail. If you are doing what is making you happy, it doesn't have to just be one thing. It could be multiple things that make you happy. I mean, I'm a therapist, I'm in school, I'm a parent, and I'm a singer. And I like all of those things. And as long as I'm committed to doing them in an honest and forthright way, I'll do my best. And if I have a bad day at one of them, I don't say to myself, I failed. Like, you can't say I failed as a parent, for example. That's a defeatist approach, and then it'll make it harder for you to go back to the table. Kyle, using you as an example, you are redeveloping your relationship through hard times with children because you're accepting, whether you're hearing it that way or not, you're accepting the fact that you didn't fail, that you just had a bad couple of years, and that still success and an ultimate version of what you feel is going to be your relationship is in the future. And if you're going at it, you can get there. But if you put the word failure in, that's a lot to compete with, right?
Sure.
Like, how do you compete with the idea that I did this today, or I did this in the past, and because I did that, I failed? It's a very hard place to be. So again, I think that that's the key, is finding the things that make you happy and finding people that help and support that. And if you need to, then learn how to monetize what you've got. And sometimes those things are just not great, you know? There's also no shame in doing things that other people think are below your intellect. You know, we do that to young people right now. I am a massive component of going to college. Don't get me wrong. But when I advise students at colleges, sometimes I tell them, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like to me that you can get a job locally here that will pay you $20 to $25 an hour, which is still not enough. You deserve more, but it'll help you get a little bit out of debt, figure out what you want to do with your life, where you want to live, and with whom you want to hang out. And you're only 20. So do that for a couple of years. Take a gap double year. Do something else. Figuring out who you are is really hard.
Yeah.
And unlike our lives, because we're older, we didn't have this massive influence of social media telling us what a good life is.
Right.
A good job is X. A good salary is X. We have so much information given to our teenagers, so they're already prejudging themselves before they go down a road, and then they've defined what failure is. Right? So the best lawyer in the world could work pro bono, and to many lawyers, they're a bad lawyer. Why? Because they're not rich. Right?
Yeah.
We're breaking that mold, hopefully, in the 21st century, where doing good things is just doing good things. And if you're lucky, they also combine with 6 and 7 figure income, because money it's the root of all evil and also fun.
I
You know,
It's the love of money.
right? The love of
That's
money is evil, right? Having
There
money
you
is
go.
innately a bad thing. And what you do with it is up to you, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So I think that that's the thing is like we're always talking about those big words, regret and failure, and um, there's so much pressure. I want to live my life and not regret it. Oh my God, that is so much pressure. You have to wake up in the morning and feel like today, everything I do, I want to make sure I don't regret. You'd have to be a perfect human being.
Yeah.
That would mean if
Good
you want
luck
to
with
take
that.
it down to the molecular level, that would mean, oh my God, that person cut me off in the car. And in my mind, I flipped them off. I'm a bad person. I failed today. You see what I mean? Like it's a slippery slope if you're
Yeah.
going to regret every single thought that comes into your head. So it's having that little extra bit of leeway to be happy and sometimes expect that that's enough. Like today was a good day. It was sunny. I went for a walk. I forgot to do my homework, but it was cool. I'll wake up tomorrow and do something else, start over. Right. I
That's
think that's
right.
the advice.
You know, the thing about parenting is it's always going to be a learning thing.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
because, well, number one, you've never been this age and had a child this age before. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
tomorrow, you would have never been the age you're going to be tomorrow and have the child that age tomorrow, and so on and so forth. And personalities and there's all kinds of things to factor. There is no perfect, book on parenting because parents and children are just always going to be different. But I'm going to get off that soapbox. Um,
Okay.
guys, I know that you all got things to do, but before we end this, do you have a website?
Yes,
Sure.
daysbeforetomorrow.com.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the starting point that will point you to all of the places you can find everything. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, um,
TikTok.
every place you would find, a new band today. Just go look for Days Before Tomorrow. There's
Right.
just
We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Music. We're on Amazon. We're not on Tidal. We're on Deezer. We're on another 10 others. So we're streaming everywhere. We have a Bandcamp page if you feel like donating when you listen to our music. You can buy the EP on Bandcamp, which is same thing, daysbeforetomorrow.bandcamp.com. But all those things are linked up on the website. Um, so you could search for us in Google and it should all pop up for you.
So when we're going to find out when you're going touring?
Well, I was going to say, we now know this person in Texas, and they're going to rep us into South by Southwest. So, Kyle, you're on it.
I'm on it because you just missed South by Southwest.
Yes, I know.
Darn it.
Well, there's always next year.
There's
Uh,
always next year.
I, we're at the beginning stages of figuring out what we want our business plan to be,
Mhm.
and there are too many iterations. So I feel like over the next couple months while we're recording, we're going to get a better grasp on what we feel the right choice is.
yeah. And you'll see us doing some shows in the New York metropolitan area. Um, we're definitely going to get that going, get the get the live machine working again.
Right, but we're local to New York, so if we're going to play, you'll see in the New York, New Jersey area first, and from there it'll probably be closer to me, maybe in Philadelphia, maybe in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, maybe in the Poconos or in Northeast Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
There are music scenes all over, so it's just a question of finding the right venues and the right lineups. And I'm sure Scott would have said this, but a lot of what we're looking to do is to put together shows with like artists,
Mm-hmm.
so that way we're supporting each other and each other's musical pathway, right? So if you're on a bill with a band that's a little prog metal, and then you've got us, and then you've got a band that's say more commercial, but has kind of a cool classic rock sound to them, that would be a great bill for us to put together. It doesn't necessarily have to be all straight up prog, but
Mhm.
just things where the potential fan bases can be exposed to other bands that they would like, so the event has value instead of I saw my friend's band or I saw this band that I listened to on Spotify. I saw this band, and this band. I feel like is a really cool thing. And without dragging that out, I just saw Jessica Hoop um at Le Poussin Rouge in New York. And I also last year went with my kid to see 21 Pilots. So really big, really small venue. One of the things that both of them did that I thought was brilliant was that they both had two opening acts. The opening acts played in the middle of the set, a show, parts of the show with them. Like they
Oh, wow.
brought the other artists onto the stage and actually played a song or two as a
Uh-huh.
collective, which is so old school, right? But it's I think it allows
Well,
them
wait though. Wait a minute,
realize
Eric,
you
though.
don't have to only like the one band. Look, we actually like each other.
I don't know if we can call that old school, because could you imagine if Rush had gotten on stage in the middle of a Kiss concert to jam
Yeah,
with those
yeah,
guys?
that would have been a little weird. Um,
You know that history, right? Of course,
yes,
that Rush actually opened for Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unimaginable. You
but
think
you
about
Hey,
it.
never know. And I think that's the thing, though, is that I'm just saying that the point of those shows is that that's we would like to create that kind of a collective around local shows, so that way, um, it is a shared creative experience, not just if we get lucky and we're playing 10,000 seat places, then all for it. Maybe if we'll get big enough, we'll be able to also bring that energy to that. But until then, we're going to try to look to create events that people feel like they're getting some kind of artistic value out of, and try to build more value into the show musically as each one comes.
and I can better believe Rush opening up for Kiss, because Jimi Hendrix opened up for the Monkees. So,
Yeah.
True.
but let me give old Tommy Shaw a call and see if I can get y'all hooked up.
That'd be
that
a
would
match
be
made in heaven. Like us
that would
opening for Styx would be the
that would
perfect
be like a dream
pairing.
come true, to be honest with you. Like there, if I had to go through my list of bands I want to play with,
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
top, and you can hear it in the music. It'd
you
be
could
a
also
fit.
hear the one thing I love without talk about soapboxes, but like a lot of bands still write. The last Styx album stands up with any Styx album.
It's actually the
It's
crash
as
of
good
the crown.
as
It's my favorite.
any. Yeah, it's one
It,
of my
it's
favorites. As
it's
good as
actually my
any
favorite
Styx
Styx
album.
record. Unbelievably.
So good.
Oh
So
man.
good. The performances are amazing. The singing is amazing. The production sounds great. The songs are hooky. I mean, it is just like everything you would ever want out of a Styx album. So if I could play a show and open for Styx, that would be a lot of fun. And I think we'd be a good match, which is very arrogant to say for a band that's not on the level of Styx, to say we should be playing with Styx. Anyway, so taking the
I
arrogance out of that comment, that would be a great match for us.
what I've heard, I don't see why you're not.
Well, thank you.
Well,
I
in my
mean,
family, they would say from your mouth to God's ears.
I was just gonna say that.
great minds think alike. See?
Here you go.
Well, I can say I've probably seen Styx more than I've seen any other band in my life, and they put on a hell of a show. I saw them one time with Night Ranger,
Mm.
and I kid you not, oh, what's his name? Jack Blades came out and played with Tommy Shaw, and they did some damn Yankee
Mm.
stuff. And I think
Yeah.
what was the name of that album they had? Shaw Blades.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And number one favorite Styx song of all time is Crystal Ball for me. What's
Nice.
yours, Scott?
My gosh, my favorite,
Hmm.
honestly, Reverie. Um,
Okay.
on the new record, I can't get enough of that song. Um, it's just, yeah, reveries, excuse me. It embodies everything about Styx, but it's also got, it starts with a Beatles vibe, and then it turns into this progressive rock thing. And for me, that's just that's it for me. I mean, I've loved them my whole life, but
Yeah.
like I said, like, I can't believe that their newest record, 40 years into their career, is like wow, this is actually my favorite. It's like they keep getting better. And
Well, all right, now I'll refer to Dr. Klein over here.
Not doctor yet, but give me a year.
Dream big.
I'm working on it. It's the favorite song depends on my mood. I'm more of an album-based Styx fan. So if I'm gonna listen to Styx, it's usually like, all right, well, today I'm gonna listen to Paradise Theater. Today I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put on Cornerstone. And like, even though, some of the songs aren't my favorite, but I get into moods to go down that. If I had to absolutely pick, my two standards are really stereotypical. Like, Fooling Yourself is one, and Boat on the River is another. I could tell you a quick story. So I went to see Styx at Radio City Music Hall, and we were very, very young, and my stepfather was a trooper, took us, and it was loud. So we're in the middle of that show, and it was the Kilroy Was Here tour.
Oh
So I
yeah.
don't know if you saw, like, so it was like they did the whole Kilroy thing, and then all of a sudden they would do a flashback and then play a Styx concert, and then all of a sudden they'd go back to it was like a stage show. But when they did the breakdown and Tommy Shaw came out by himself and played Boat on the River, my stepfather was moved, like literally watched him get emotional,
Oh wow.
because the music itself felt like music that was familiarly, like, in our modes. The types of minor key chords and the way the instrumentation was, that kind of Mediterranean, and kind of Eastern European feel to some of the chord structure and to the playing, really touched him. And I think that's why that song means so much to me, because it made that concert experience from, oh my God, I can't wait to go home, to, you know what, Eric has good taste in music. Like,
See,
thanks
music
to Tom Shaw, I won him over.
music brings people together, man. It
True.
really does. Fellas, I know y'all got stuff to do, but I can't thank you for you spending time with me today. And I know time is precious, and
this was
to
great.
It was great. I had a great time.
Yeah, love
thank
talking
you.
with you.
Well, promise me when the next album comes out, you let me know. I'd love you to come on and talk about it.
You bet.
Sounds
You
good to
got
me.
that for sure.
I will be sharing all the links in the description, so folks can find it real easy. And until the next one, everyone, please take care, be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.